It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Thomas Russo. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Let's see. Well, it looks like you do a lot of things, yeah?
I try to keep busy, Douglas.
The first thing I see on your bio here that I want to ask you about, because I don't really know what it is, it says, Mr. Russo is a competent and confident servant leader. What is that? What is a servant leader?
The best way I would describe that is, to me, there are two kinds of leaders. There's the type of leader that says, what can you do for me? And then there's the type of servant leader that says, what can I do for you? And it took me a long time to understand the distinction between the two and to, I would say, mature into more of the servant leader role and to understand that I needed to bring value to, my coworkers, my employees, and others, rather than always expecting them to do for me. I think that's the best way I would describe the difference.
Okay. You have a company? I'm just trying to see what exactly you do here. Municipal.
Sure. My full-time endeavors, I'm the town manager in Newton, New Jersey, and on the side I teach at 3 colleges, Pillar College, Seton Hall, and Fairleigh Dickinson. And then I started my own consulting business a few years ago as an offshoot of the book that I published in 2019. And I'm busy on multiple fronts, but genuinely enjoy all the different endeavors I'm involved with.
Okay. The book, There Are No Politics in Heaven, is that the book you're referring to?
Yes, that was my book that I authored, correct.
It's a nice title.
Yeah, people like the title and the subtitle, A Recovering Politician's Guide to Christian Living. I'm not going to lie, Douglas, it is catchy, but there's a lot of meaning behind both title and subtitle.
Well, I wish there were no politics on earth as well as in heaven, to be honest with you.
Well, that I think that's above my pay grade, Douglas, as they say. But I don't disagree. Having lived in politics for 30 years in New Jersey, I don't disagree with your statement.
Well, you want to tell us a little about the book? Because it says it's a humorous book. Is it a satire, or is there what is the takeaway?
Yeah, the book is a story of my life. So the first half of the book is my journey as someone who, at a very young age, gravitated towards government and politics and, started a career very successfully as a teenager, as a volunteer, and eventually as an elected official at a very young age. But always putting politics kind of ahead of my career and other aspects of my life. I kind of circled back to politics later in life and really did not have a pleasurable or enjoyable experience. So the first half of the book really is my journey of ups and downs of life, the childhood bullying, the adult years, dealing with anxiety and depression and thoughts of suicide, and then how I turned away from politics, which was my drug of choice, and more towards a life of spirituality, and how my life really transformed in the second half of the book and lessons learned, because I really wanted people to understand that, we like to give off the facade of being perfect, but we're not perfect. And we all have challenges and things that we need to deal with. And when I confronted my demons a few years ago, that's when my life really accelerated and became much more positive and fulfilling and rewarding. So the book title is funny, but There Are No Politics in Heaven actually is as much for the audience and, to get a little humor out of it. And it's as much written for me as the instruction to me, telling me that there's no politics in heaven. And, I'm a recovering politician. I lived a very successful life and career in politics, but unfortunately, it did a lot of personal damage to me mentally and with other challenges. And I realized that I tell people, Douglas, I used to have myself on the throne until God kicked me off. And I'm very grateful for the day that happened, because I needed to recalibrate a lot of people, places, and things that were carried over from politics. And yeah, the book is my life story, but with a lot of life lessons that I think apply to where people are at today, and especially now with the pandemic and people really struggling with mental health issues, and especially a lot of children and young people struggling. The book really is an opportunity for them to find the comfort and space to address their life, where it is today currently, and hopefully build for a better future ahead.
I'm glad I started off with your definition of servant leader, because it is,
Sure.
There's an ironic application there, what you said about you went from what can you do for me to what I can do for you. Most politicians, when they come out of the starting gate, start with what can I do for you? But in reality, it turns into what can you do for me? It seems to be almost consistent across the board. Once they get into power, they could care less what they can do for you. So I think it's a very good point to make.
Thank you. It's unfortunate but true. And I've been involved in government and politics for almost 40 years now, and I've met some really great people that were very genuine in their public service and their desire to help people, and I've met people opposite that. So by no means, like any career or any professional endeavor, there are good and there's bad. I'm just willing to highlight, my experience in it, and to, we surely want people to be in local government or national politics or volunteer for different boards and commissions and committees. We don't function as a society without volunteerism and without people being engaged in civics and political life. But how you are outside of politics only gets magnified in politics. So having a more critical eye about the character and integrity of the people we elect or that we support, I think is important. And yeah, I think focusing on servant leadership definitely changes the relationship between constituent and politician, and hopefully, with politicians with themselves.
Well, I just find it very frustrating to see what's going on in Washington. And with, some governors in the states, especially during the pandemic, it seemed like at a time when the country really needed politicians who embraced the idea of what can I do for you, a lot of them, most of them, went completely the other way around.
Well, the experience, and I've been running a town during a pandemic, so very small scale compared to the country, but the principles are exactly the same, whether you're running a town like Newton of 3 square miles and 8,000 people, or the state of New Jersey with 9 million people, or the country. The principles are exactly the same. And what I learned through the pandemic was, look, there was a lot of uncertainty in the beginning. There were a lot of preventative measures that needed to be taken in order to protect people because of the uncertainty. And then, as I always use kind of every 60, 90 days, there always seemed to be something different or new to learn and to implement or to modify. And so there needed to be, firm direction, but there also needed to be flexibility that you built over time, and, proper communication, honesty. We don't always have all the answers at the exact moment. And I think a level of honesty and transparency. And yeah, I can point to leaders on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, some that were exceptional and some that I up and were not really up. They couldn't handle the challenge. And, we'd love government and our lives to be perfect and linear and not have the ups and downs, but that's not how it works. And so in government, you have to be able to say, well, I think my day looks like this, but when something hits the fan and you need to deal with the water main break or the police shooting or the house fire or, nationally, a war or economic downturn, sometimes you need to shelf your original plans and schedule and perceptions, and you need to adapt, and you need to adapt quickly. And I think some leaders are able to adapt and some are not, because they get very myopic in their thinking about what their day or schedule or their platform should be. And sometimes life throws you a curveball, and you have to, you got to be able to hit the curveball just as much as the fastball. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of leadership lessons we can learn from the pandemic on both sides of the aisle, because there were some, true examples of courage, and some failures in leadership too.
Well, no argument from me. You called yourself a recovering politician. Did you have some sort of an epiphany moment that kind of changed everything for you?
Yes. So September 2015, I had made the decision to go back into politics a second time in my new hometown after being remarried, and did not enjoy the experience, and found that I was basically living by somebody else's script. I was living my life based on what other people wanted from me, honestly, whether it was my wife or my children, my parents, people in society, people in Newton where I was the town manager, or people in Bernards Township where I became a township committeeman. And I just remember, hitting rock bottom. There was a lot of anxiety and depression and thoughts of suicide. And I said, is this my life? That my life is determined by what other people want from me or for me, and isn't there a better way? And I had a religious transformational experience in my office in September of 2015, and I heard a voice, and the voice said to me, "Tom, it's time." And I took that to mean that it was time to change and to do things very differently, and I did not have any type of a blueprint or a game plan at that moment when I was on my hands and knees in my office, Douglas, but I said, you know what? I am going to try something that I've never really tried before, and that was faith, and that was spirituality. I changed my faith system from traditional Roman Catholic to more general born-again Christian. My wife and I started to go to a new church. I did counseling and therapy, and I walked away from politics, which is what I thought was my life's purpose, and realized that there were skills I had in politics that would transform into other endeavors, that I didn't need a title, I didn't need adulation and affection of voters to be successful and to be a true public servant. And I blew up my world. I blew up people, places, and things, metaphorically speaking. And I tell people I rebooted the system, and I created a mosaic of my life that God planned for me and that I was comfortable with. And I tell people my life used to be standard definition TV, and then once I gave up politics, it became high definition. Like that's the level of clarity and purpose that came my way when I walked away from something that I thought defined who I was. And it never did. And a lot of it was really in my head about, the fat kid who grew up being bullied and spent his childhood being bullied, and the ramifications of what that did to me mentally and how I had to overcome those demons as an adult. So, walking away from politics and having that epiphany in September 2015 changed my world.
I always found it ironic that, in my opinion, I don't think politics and religion mix at all. And I don't think they have any place in one sort of set of skills, if you will.
Right.
However,
no, go ahead.
However, there has always been this emphasis on the candidate's religious beliefs. And I always found that curious, especially, maybe not as much now, but if you go back to like JFK, people were real concerned that he was Irish Catholic back in the day, and they thought that that was going to cost him the election, and won by a very slim margin. But there's always this thing about, what is their religious beliefs? Like, I don't think it has any purpose in politics at all. In fact, I think they're opposing concepts. I think they're like magnets. They repel each other. Mm-hmm.
I think I would agree with you to an extent. Where I think I would differ slightly is, and just my experience I can only speak of, that when I kind of recalibrated my existence and my faith and my world, it changed, like I said, it changed my leadership style, I would say, because I was much more authoritative prior to my journey of becoming a born-again Christian. So it definitely changed how I managed relationships and people, projects, and it made me a better town manager. And, that's just my experience. So, yeah, I don't sit here and proselytize, and I don't do that from the office. But if you asked many of my employees, they would say that there was a transformation in how I behaved, how I treated them, how I handled certain situations, challenges. So do I necessarily say, you must believe this or that to be a successful leader of an organization? No, I don't think that's accurate. But when you look at when you look at religion, you look at kind of the major religions and the major tenets of, love and peace and character and integrity. Those are universal. And whether you're religious or spiritual, how you treat people definitely defines who you are as a person and as a leader. So I think if you kind of strip away the tenets of the religion beyond, the basics that seem to be universal, I peace and respect and things that we teach children at a very young age are, spiritual tenets and are religious tenets. And I think my leadership style has definitely evolved and improved because of my faith. But yeah, I know a lot of people that are successful in various organizations that are maybe not as religious as me or as spiritual as me. But I also know people that are very spiritual and religious, and they just have great skills, great people skills. They're very honorable in their personal life. There's a synergy between their personal and professional endeavors, which I think is important. And they just, have high accountability, consistency, and transparency. So I think, I wouldn't say the religion per se drives the success and the leadership, but I certainly would say that the tenets of the faith and the basic core belief system can definitely bring value to who they are as a person and then who they are in an organization. That would be my perception.
Well, I think the idea that their religious beliefs would work on an individual level to strengthen the individual is fine. Where it gets a little messy is when people use it as a label as part of the candidate's sort of dossier, if you will. And I just don't think it has a place there.
Labeling people when they run for office based on religion really doesn't help things. But I think, like we talked about, the emphasis on their character and integrity and respect, kindness, things that sometimes we take for granted. I think if they have that in their spiritual identity and in their personal life, and they can bring that to the public square and to, interacting with the public and public funds and projects, I think there's value to that. And I think, having different perspectives from different faith backgrounds is important. So, I've seen both sides of it, and I just know for me personally, my faith system and my beliefs definitely have made me a better public servant than I was, 10 or 20 years ago.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I hope more people take to that, because I'm not a very optimistic person when it comes to our political candidates in this country on either side. I am not a fan of either side at this point.
Frustrates me as much as it does you, Douglas, because there are a lot of significant challenges that we face at all levels of government, and when you have a system that emphasizes money over results or re-election over solving problems, that's the problem we have. I know a lot of good people in government and politics at all levels throughout the country, and when you're more worried about re-election or who the donor is or all these other things, all these temptations that are in the playground of politics, in the end, it's the people that suffer. And the reason I love local government more than state or national politics is, as a town manager, I don't have the luxury to be indifferent. I don't have the luxury to not solve problems. Why? Because that's when people come to town council meetings and yell at me. And that's when they talk to local officials they see at the supermarket. I mean, that's the blessing of local government, is local government will drive more of what you do on a daily basis than state or national politics. It just does. And that's why I always encourage young people to get involved in local government, because it really can make a difference. But yeah, trust me, I mean, I've studied politics for 30 plus years, 40 years. I've been involved for that long a period of time. I get frustrated, but I think the word I would use is I'm sad. I'm sad by the level of discourse and, the level of vitriol, and the fact that all we do is just throw problems back and forth because it's politically expedient, but we don't solve the problems, because it means more to Republicans to have the issue or to Democrats to have the issue than to actually have the accomplishment. And I hope and pray, if I can be, put that hat on for a second, I hope and pray for the day where the party labels are irrelevant, like they were when George Washington gave his farewell address and warned us about the, political parties. Solve the problem. If the problem is the border, solve the problem. If the problem is taxes, climate, I don't care what the problem is. At the local government level, Douglas, you got to roll up your sleeves You got to figure it out, and you got to move on to the next thing, because we don't have the luxury of just sitting back and killing, verbally destroying a topic and people for months and years, because we have to move on to the next thing. And I hope people at all levels of government would have that sense of urgency about working together, solving problems. You don't always get your way. 80-20 is better than 0. Sometimes it's 60-40. I mean, it's life, right? It's not meant to be a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. We're supposed to figure things out, make lives better, and then move on to the next chapter and the next problem. So that's what I hope for as we go forward in this country.
Well, great. I hope so too. And, just to sum up your statement about what can I do for you, I think is the takeaway from all of this, basically. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have a website that you want to give out for your book, or a personal website?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I thank you for the opportunity. My website, nopoliticsinheaven.com. The book is available on Amazon. I also do coaching, consulting, and training for people. So if they want to check me out on Twitter or Facebook, or they can look me up on LinkedIn. That's my strongest platform, where I make a lot of great connections and business opportunities. So I'm happy to connect. I'm happy to discuss the book further with people, or just, meet them where they are and walk with them and give them some guidance on how they can transform. Because remember, Douglas, if you met me years ago, you would have said, wow, this guy's got everything going on. He's got a great life, and I was crumbling on the inside. So I just know in my heart that there's a lot of people suffering right now, and if I can bring value to them, or other people can through their books or coaching, I think we need to have that. We have to look out for our neighbors, and that maybe that's my spirituality talking, but I just think a lot of people are suffering, and if I can help them with my story, that they can help rewrite their story, then my painful journey was worth it.
Well, great. Again, thank you for coming on the show and sharing. Best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, Production Supervisor for DJC Productions. And you're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Kristine Raymond. Hi, Kristine. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Oh, my pleasure. As we were just talking about, you were on the video show, the VE show, back in January. And I remember we had a nice conversation about all your record albums that were in the background.
Yes, I know. Where does time go? How was it June already?
Yeah, 6 months. It's very quick, it seems. And you're back now, and you've got a book that You're kind of re-promoting, right? When did you write this book, Seasons of Love?
Oh, my goodness. Several years ago. I don't remember the exact date. I almost want to say it came out in 2018, maybe. Might have even been before that. But I like to promote it around this time of year because it's a great beach read or poolside read or vacation read, however you want to, classify it. It's contemporary romance. And Seasons of Love is a collection of 4 short stories. They're seasonally themed. So we get dogwoods in springtime, seashells in summer, aspens in autumn, and snowflakes in winter. And each is a complete story, has a happily ever after. But what I really like about it, and this wasn't necessarily something I set out to do, but each character or at least one character in each story has a relationship to a character in another story. So it kind of goes full circle. And that was just so much fun. Once I sort of figured out that was happening, I'm like, ooh, I like this. I'm gonna play with this a little bit.
Is the relationship between the characters in the different stories, is it romantic, or is it just, they happen to know the one that's in the next story?
In one case, it's siblings. So dogwoods in springtime and seashells in summer each feature one of the Brightman sisters. And then in seashells in summer to aspens in autumn, the 2 male main characters were army buddies. And then you have in aspens in autumn and snowflakes in winter, the male main character and the female main character are divorced. And the male main character in Snowflakes in Winter is the brother-in-law of the main character in Dogwoods in Springtime. So it's kind of like all different sorts of relationships.
Oh, but it's family though, right? I mean, most of them are family.
Family
Yeah.
or friends or exes or yeah.
Okay. All right. Can I ask you something just about writing in general?
Sure.
Okay, because I'm starting to dive into this. I think what's happened is because I've been interviewing so many authors on the show that I kind of got sparked to, think, well, maybe I can write something, which I may be kidding myself. But anyways, so I wrote a little book, a real little book. I've called it a pamphlet, basically, because it's only 24 pages and it's about 7,000 words. What do you have to get, what's the minimum amount of words for it to be classified as something like a short story, or where are the levels of word requirements? Do you happen to know that, like for publishers?
Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head. I do know that I fall more in what would technically be classified as a novella, not necessarily a novel. I think for most of my books, I sort of just hit the threshold of what's considered a novel. I think anything up to 10,000 words is like a short story, and then you've got your 10 to 30, 40,000 words, which is a novella, and then 40,000 on up is a novel, and then you get into your War and Peace epic type things. But right offhand, I can't recall the exact word count.
Okay.
And honestly, for me, I don't worry about it. I write the story that's there. I don't try to meet a word count, because if I fall short of the story I'm telling of that word count, then I don't want to feel like I have to pad the story to reach some arbitrary number. So I just let the story unfold as it does and go from there. And as long as I'm telling a complete story the way I want to tell it and readers are happy, that's good enough for me.
Well, I think that's a good advice and a good way to work with your story. Also, the nice thing too is, at least for me, because it was so short, a publisher's not going to take it, but you can always upload it to Amazon. Doesn't matter how long it is. They don't classify it particularly.
Right. I'm trying to think. I think you're right. I'm not sure that they have a length. I know when it comes to pricing, there's some sort of, you can't price a really short book over like 99 cents or something. But I've never really had that issue. I do have a shorter, and I can't remember, I think maybe 84 pages, something like that. It's my my little anecdotal book about my first year as an indie author. It's called Right Words. And as I said, I think that's 84 pages, something like that. And that's just a small little book that I wrote that I felt the need to get out there, and it's up everywhere for 99 cents. And yeah, that's one of the nice things about indie publishing is you can write what you want and you can put it out there.
Yeah, that's great.
For people to read.
I love that idea, because what I was going to say in my book, there's no way I could have done 50,000 words. That would have been the most boring read in the world. You know, nobody would have wanted to read that. But at 20...
Well, and congratulations for writing it, for just go ahead and doing it. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, it was actually just I don't know how to describe it. It's not a fiction. It's more like an editorial rant, for lack of a better way to describe it. And it's just sort of my take on this whole podcast industry and how it relates to other forms of media creation and why podcasting has been put to the low end of the reins, if you will, because there's so many people doing it that it's just cheapened the market to the point that they're not worth anything. And there's no gatekeepers. There's no built-in gatekeepers like there are with music. Presumably music has its sort of own built-in gatekeepers where people are not going to wake up one morning and say, well, gee, I think I'm going to be a musician and I'm going to make an album. You know, because there's a lot of work to it. Aside from having some musical talent, which might be nice, got to have a lot of technical expertise to mix, to master, to all of it, right? So by its own inherent nature, it has built-in gatekeepers. But with a podcast, what I'm finding is that people say, well, geez, I'm going to start a podcast. And, well, what are the qualifications? Well, do you have a computer? Yeah, sure. Can you talk? Yep. Okay, you're a podcaster. That's it.
That's how I started mine.
Yeah. And I'm not,
I did. I woke up one day
I believe
and said,
it.
You know what? I wanted to start a podcast.
Well, I believe it.
And I had it for 2 years,
Are you still doing it?
No, it went on hiatus December 31st. I had 231 guests, I believe.
Oh, all right.
And it was a lot of fun, and I had a blast. It's still out there. It's still available to listen to. It's called Wordplay with Kristine, Raymond. And it was so much fun, and I absolutely loved doing it. But what I didn't anticipate that morning when I woke up and said, hey, I think I'm going to start a podcast, was how much time I needed to invest in it. And that's the thing. If you want to do anything well, anything at all, you need to invest the time into it.
Well, that's just the point. And that's exactly the point of my book, is that people do like you do. And I'm not knocking you. I'm not trying to insult your work in any way. But what's happened is that people wake up one morning and they say, okay, I think I'm going to do a podcast. You don't need a big investment. You don't need a crew of people like you do to make a film or any, real serious artistic talent like you would for music. And then people just do it, and they do it because they love doing it. And then the market gets so flooded that people that are trying to do it seriously for a career are running into all of these barriers, which again is, I explain in the book, but like earned media and things like that, where, people will refuse to pay for sponsorship because it's a podcast. And because there's so many out there that people don't take them as serious forms of media content. And this was my rant in the book, yeah.
Well, and the point I was going to bring up is that's what indie authors face, is because the indie market opened up and everybody who wants to write a book can write a book and get it out there. They don't need a publisher anymore. They can self-publish. And there are a lot of people who think that, indie authors aren't qualified to be authors because they self-publish, and that's not true. There are a lot of awesome indie authors out there, and then there are other people yourself excluded, but there are other people who just, put out anything just to get it out there.
Well, you're right.
And it's the same thing that you're saying. People look at that and they go, oh, well, all indie books must be bad then because I read this one and it was horrible.
That's true, except, and I do bring this up in the book again, I'll send you a copy of the book for free. It's 24 pages. It'll take you 15 minutes to read it. You are in the United States, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, because for some reason Amazon will only allow me to send the book to people in the U.S. I don't know why. I can't send it to anybody in Canada or the U.K. Well, what I was going to say about indie books, and it still has to be done the old-fashioned way. Somebody still has to get up, sit down, and write the book out. Whether you write it out with a quill pen or a computer, it's still the same process of writing a story. Now, to the degree of how great the story is, and if it's full of grammatical and technical errors, then that's no good. That's bad. But the idea of having to do that discourages a lot of people. Just, oh God, that's so much work, So the point, again, is that technology hasn't changed the actual process of creating the content. What it has changed is how you can distribute it. And I agree, the market is more flooded now with books than it ever has been. And wading through all of the sort of crappy books to find the good books is probably a daunting task. But when I compared basically indie filmmaking, indie music, indie authors, and podcasting, I found that podcasting was definitely at the bottom of the pile. So that was really my rant. And it's funny, we've ended up talking more about my book than yours. I apologize. I didn't mean to go off on
Oh, no, not at all. Hey, I like these kind of conversations. They're just what they are.
Well, certainly you've been at this a lot longer than I have. So how many books have you written at this point?
I have 16 published books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Self-published, yeah. And I have ideas, and I mean actual concrete ideas, not just, something floating around. I have the ideas for, I counted out the other night, 37 more stories.
Wow.
That's not counting all of those little half-baked kind of, ooh, that would be cool to write someday. So I don't see that I'll be stopping anytime soon. It's just again the time that it takes, and I say this a lot too. For me, and I'm speaking solely for me, I cannot turn my creativity on and off like a switch. It's either there with me in the moment or it's not.
Yeah, me too.
And the past couple of years, even though the ideas are there, even though the stories are there, and I have several books that I've started, the creativity has not been there for me. I haven't been able to connect into it. And for that reason, I haven't published anything since 2019. But I haven't stopped my brain from still churning over ideas, and a scene will pop into my head every once in a while, and I'll write it down because it's a great scene. It's just I can't get past the scene, So it's still all there. It's just making that connection for me.
The best creative moments I've had lately, in terms of songwriting anyways, have been while I'm driving. And that's not always convenient. But, when I get into that sort of, you can drive pretty autonomously, and then you're just driving along, and, that sort of puts me in the brain mood where it allows the creativeness to come through. So I don't know, everybody's different. What can you do? What have you tried anything to try to get it going, or is it just it comes or it doesn't?
I've tried all sorts of things. I've tried just not doing anything and just kind of letting your brain go. And I've tried, writing near water. I've tried writing by hand, kind of all of those things at one point or another over the years. And it really all comes down to, I really think, how my brain is wired. And right now, and I say right now, meaning the past 2 years, it just, I have other things occupying it. I've started a really huge garden this year, and and I've added chickens to my homestead, and my just things in everyday life that take my attention away from being able to just say, okay, I'm going to not think, basically, because for me that's when creativity comes in, when I'm not actively thinking, which means usually it happens right as I'm drifting off to sleep. And that's when all of these ideas start flooding in, and it's like, okay, do I get out of bed and start writing and risk losing it, because as the moment I'm 100% awake, it's like that bubble pops, or do I hope that I'll remember it in the morning, which I never do. So,
well, yeah,
it's a process, and I think we all find our process and what works for us, and I really believe that it also finds us. Like, it's not, again, and I'm really just speaking for me, because I know there's authors out there that say if you sit at your desk every day, the words will come. I've tried that, and I can sit and stare at a blank computer screen for 3 hours because the words don't come for me.
Yeah,
or
that doesn't.
I write something,
I don't think that works.
So horrible that a grocery list would be more entertaining. So.
I don't think you can force yourself, and I've always admired people who could sort of wake up at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write today. And that just doesn't work for me. I can't do that. There's no inspiration at all. Anyways, let's wrap this up. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It is www.KristineRaymond.com, and that is Kristine with a K. And on that website, you will find links to all of my books. You'll find a media page, actually 3 different media pages, because I have it split up between print and audio and video. You can find links to my social media. I mean, pretty much everything about me is on my website. In fact, I was thinking about it just a couple of days ago that on my About Me page, I think I need to add some pictures of my life outside of books, which again is my garden and my chickens and just, things like that are more about me, not just me, the author.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe that'll give you something to write. You can change your About Me. A whole 2 paragraphs. There you go. That should keep you satisfied for years. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And I apologize for going off on a rant about my book, but,
Oh, please don't apologize.
Okay.
I love hearing about other authors' work as much as hopefully people love hearing about mine. So, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, you're most welcome.